All right, ready to dive into some seriously deep stuff about how America works on the world stage.
Let's do it.
Today, we're cracking open A World Safe for Commerce by Dale C. Copeland.
Oh, this is a good one. It really makes you think differently about some familiar history.
Yeah, Copeland argues that America's foreign policy, those big decisions about war and peace and treaties, it's not always about spreading democracy or being the world police.
Nope, not always. He says it often boils down to something way more practical, way more grounded in, well, economics.
Economics, like money talks.
Exactly. He calls it trade expectations.
Okay, hold on. Trade expectations. That sounds kind of jargony.
I know, right? But it's actually a really simple idea. See, it all comes down to what America expects to happen with its future trade.
Okay, so like if things are looking good economically, if trade is booming, then America's going to be feeling pretty good about the world.
Exactly. You're more likely to see peace treaties, trade deals, everyone playing nice in the sandbox.
There's always a but, isn't there?
There is. What happens when those trade expectations go south?
Like when leaders start seeing threats to American businesses, to access to markets, to those essential resources.
Exactly. That's when things can get a bit more assertive.
Assertive, meaning warships and ultimatums and all that.
Sometimes. And Copeland backs this up with some seriously compelling examples from history. Like, take the War of 1812.
Oh, the one everyone remembers for the burning of the White House.
Exactly. But Copeland argues there's way more to the story than just those British sailors being a pain.
There's always more to the story, right?
Right. So see, the British, they were messing with American trade big time. Blockades, seizing ships, the whole 9 yards.
And they were doing this because
Because they were busy with their own little spat with Napoleon.
so America got caught in the crossfire of European power politics.
You got it. And it really left a mark. Copeland shows how even back then, America wasn't just protecting its borders, it was protecting its ability to trade freely on the world stage.
So that desire for economic security, for a world safe for commerce, it's not just some modern idea, it's been there all along.
Exactly. And it becomes a recurring theme in U.S. foreign policy.
Okay, so one war, one example. Convince me some more. What other historical events support this whole trade expectations theory?
Fast forward with me to the eve of the Spanish-American War. Remember the Maine?
Of course, the explosion that basically kicked off the war with Spain. But you're going to tell me there's more to it, Robert.
Always. While that was a major turning point, Copeland digs a little deeper. He finds America's anxiety about losing access to the China market bubbling beneath the surface.
Wait, China, weren't they considered the sick man of Asia back then? How could they pose a threat to American trade?
They were struggling, yes, but the U.S. saw massive economic potential there. The problem was that other powers, Russia, Germany, Japan, they were all carving out their own spheres of influence in China. The open door to China was slamming shut.
So the U.S. was feeling left out, like they were missing out on a gold rush?
That's a great way to put it. And Copeland argues that this fear, this sense that America's economic future was at stake, played a huge role in the decision to confront Spain.
Wow, so the Spanish-American War wasn't just about Cuba and the Maine, it was about China, too.
In a way, yes. It was about securing America's place in the Pacific, about ensuring access to those future markets. These trade expectations, they were simmering beneath the surface.
Wow, that puts a whole new spin on things.
And get this, Copeland's analysis goes even further, right into the heart of the Cold War.
Hold on, the Cold War, everyone thinks that was all about nukes and ideology, good versus evil, capitalism versus communism. Are you saying trade played a role in that too?
A much bigger one than most realize. Yeah. It really did. Like, Copeland points to Eisenhower's reluctance to offer trade concessions to the Soviets, try to sweeten the deal a little.
Makes sense. Use trade as a carrot, maybe build some trust.
Exactly. But Eisenhower, he wasn't so keen on that idea. And guess what?
What?
It actually fueled Khrushchev's paranoia, made him even more suspicious of the West.
So instead of building bridges, it kind of deepened the divide.
Exactly. It's a classic example of how misunderstanding those trade expectations can really backfire.
Wow. So did that approach continue throughout the Cold War? Or did things change as the decades went by?
Things got a bit more nuanced, especially with Nixon and Kissinger. They understood the power of economic incentives.
The classic carrot and stick approach. But with global superpowers, I imagine the carrots are a bit bigger.
You got it. So they dangled the carrot of trade to encourage the Soviets to play nice. And you know what? Copeland suggests that this actually helped lay the groundwork for détente,
Détente. That period in the 70s when things seemed to be thawing a bit between the US and the Soviet Union.
Right, but of course there's a plot twist.
Always a plot twist. What happened?
Congress stepped in.
Oh no, Congress is getting involved. That's rarely a good sign, is it?
Not this time. They made the Soviets doubt America's commitment to open trade.
Wait, so all that progress toward peace, all those negotiations, undermined because Congress got cold feet.
It definitely threw a wrench in the works. The Soviets saw this as proof that they couldn't trust America to keep its promises about trade. And that mistrust, it kind of poisoned the well, undermined those efforts to build a lasting peace. Talk about unintended consequences.
Wow. History is rarely straightforward, is it? Okay, so we've gone from open conflict in 1812 to using trade as a bargaining chip during the Cold War. What about the fall of the Soviet Union? Most people credit Reagan's tough talk and military buildup for that.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Right, it's iconic.
Exactly. So did trade play any role in the Soviet collapse?
It did. It's easy to forget, but Gorbachev was desperate to reform the Soviet economy. It was on the verge of collapse.
And he saw a lifeline in increased trade with the West.
Exactly. He saw a chance for the Soviet Union to integrate into the global system.
So Reagan used trade as leverage too, but in a different way than Nixon. It's fascinating how one tool can be used in so many different ways.
Isn't it? And that shift in trade expectations, it played a part in Gorbachev's willingness to make concessions and eventually to let go in the Soviet Empire.
Wow. Okay, so we've seen how this idea of trade expectations has played out across centuries of American history. But what does it mean for us today? What does Copeland say about how this dynamic is shaping America's relationship with China?
That's where things get really, really interesting.
So that's the big question then, right? Like, what does this all mean for the US and China today? Is a big showdown inevitable?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Copeland, he doesn't offer any easy answers. He's really clear about the risks, the fact that things are really tense right now.
And we see that every day, just reading the headlines.
Exactly. But he also says that conflict isn't inevitable. It's a choice.
So there's still agency. There's still a chance to steer things in a different direction.
Exactly. And he's a big part of that is understanding, really understanding where China's coming from.
Not making excuses for their actions, but getting inside their heads a bit.
Exactly. Like, remember, he argues that a lot of China's actions, they come from that same desire for economic security that's driven U.S. foreign policy for ages.
So it's not necessarily about China wanting to dominate the world, but about them feeling insecure, wanting to protect their own interests.
That's a big part of it, he says. And once you understand that, it opens up possibilities. Maybe there's a way for the U.S. and China to manage this competition, to create a sense of mutual benefit.
So it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. Both countries can prosper.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
it takes work.
Right.
Careful diplomacy, a willingness to find common ground.
Which can be tough, especially given how tense things are right now.
No doubt. Like, there are some really thorny issues on the table. Trade practices, intellectual property, access to key technologies. These aren't easy things to just brush aside.
So how do you even begin to tackle those kinds of challenges? Does Copeland offer any concrete solutions?
He does. He's got a whole multi-pronged approach he lays out. First off, he's a big believer in maintaining a strong military.
Classic deterrence theory. Peace through strength.
Right. But it's not about being trigger-happy. It's about making it crystal clear to China that any aggression would be a really, really bad idea.
So basically, don't even think about it. But it's not just about waving a big stick, right?
Nope. Copeland also stresses what he calls economic statecraft.
Okay, break that down for me. What does that even mean?
So it means using all the tools in the economic toolbox, trade agreements, investment policies, technological innovation to give America an edge.
So playing hardball, but on the economic field.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that economic power is just as important as military might in this game, maybe even more so.
So we've got a strong military, smart economic policies. Anything else?
One more thing, and this is crucial. Alliances.
Yes, the old strength in numbers strategy.
Exactly. Copeland argues that America can't go it alone in this new era of great power competition. They need to work with like-minded countries, present a united front.
So who are these like-minded countries?
We're talking countries that share democratic values, that believe in a rules-based international order. And this includes working with countries in those key contested zones like we talked about earlier.
So offering those countries a compelling alternative to partnering with China?
Exactly. It's about demonstrating that the U.S. is a reliable partner, someone you can count on in the long run.
Okay, so we've got military strength, smart economic policies, a network of allies. Anything else? Or is that the magic formula?
Well, there's one more thing. Copeland argues that ultimately for the U.S. to really compete, to be successful in the long run, it needs to get its own house in order. He's talking about domestic renewal.
So strengthening the U.S. economy, investing in education and infrastructure, addressing those internal divisions that seem to be getting worse these days.
All of that. He argues that a strong and vibrant America, one that's firing on all cylinders domestically, is the best deterrent against any challenge.
That's a powerful message. It's not just about countering China, but about building a better, more resilient U.S. This deep dive into Dale Copeland's A World Safe for Commerce has been fascinating. It's really given us a new way to think about history, about how we got to where we are today.
It really makes you question those simple narratives, those easy answers.
Exactly. So as we wrap things up here, I'm left with one final kind of provocative thought for our listeners. Copeland, he focuses on trade expectations. But what other hidden forces might be shaping the decisions that impact our world? What's lurking beneath the surface, waiting to be understood? That's something for all of us to ponder.